Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Backers of India's Best Ideas, a show that takes you inside the minds of people who have backed and helped create some of the country's largest companies and brands. My name is Dhimant Parekh, and I am the founder of The Better India and The Better Home. In today's show, we have someone with a very interesting background. He spent over a decade in an FMCG company. He then spent another decade funding early stage technology companies. And now, for the past 5 years, he has helped create brands that you use on a daily basis. Brands like ID Fresh, Paperboat, Licious, Bombay Shaving Company, and many, many more. Please welcome Kanwaljit Singh of Fireside Ventures. So, Kanwal, firstly, thanks for being a part of this show. Really excited to have you here. And I want to start this right from the beginning, way back, and help us understand what really made you decide that this is what you wanted to do. That this is what your latest ideas.
As you know, my career, first 13, 14 years, I was really, working in operating roles in companies like Unilever and Intel. And that was really, I would call it the foundation years for me to understand brands, understand, consumer products, understand the whole distribution side of things. Unfortunately, having worked in two different industries gives me a very good perspective of two very different businesses. And then, in the late 90s, early 2000 time frame, I started seeing this emergence of entrepreneurship. Globally, of course, internet had become a big driving force. And it just felt like, there was something very exciting happening in that world. And I decided to, kind of switch careers, switch jobs into the entrepreneurial side of things. But rather than, start something of my own, I just felt I would enjoy the experience of working with multiple entrepreneurial, companies with exciting entrepreneurs. And then somewhere about 7, 8 years ago, I started getting this realization, the urge that something was happening in the consumer brand space. And I could connect back to the levers and my own experiences. And it felt like, there was something interesting happening. And I also realized that to, really, almost dive in on the deep end, it probably made sense to do this as an exclusive focus rather than try and kind of fit it into a technology funds construct. So that's how I left Helion and started a family office of my own. In fact, that's how Fireside was born.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so when you actually go back and look at this journey, right, it's very fascinating because you straddled both sides of the world, from the backgrounds like levers, and then coming in the middle through the whole technology early stage startups, and now the consumer brand space, right? So we'd love to hear of a particular investment that you made that really means a lot to you and ties in somewhere you feel with your journey as a VC.
There is one company that I am particularly fond of, actually two, if I may. Which I would say have kind of brought me full circle. So in a way, these are more of my recent experiences, but still, they complete almost the loop. So the first one is, of course, Paperboat.
Right.
This is, Neeraj's company. So the interesting story is that Neeraj came to Helion as a summer intern. And this was, if I'm not mistaken, 2009, almost 11 years ago. And he, had spent 10 years with Coke. Then he went to Wharton. So there was something, very passionate about him, about wanting to start something or do something exciting in the beverage space. So when he came back and he said, I'm going to start this company which will make energy drinks called Singh. It was quite exciting, but a little bit of a, peep into the unknown because, no one really knew what that space was and how large it was. So unfortunately, we could not convince ourselves at the fund level and build a strong thesis around investing in a non-tech energy drink starting from a concept. And I decided, call it a whim, call it, just, fascination of a great entrepreneur wanting to do something very different. So I put in my own money at that point of time. So in a way, that was my almost the first personal investment I did. I think just to round off the question you asked, the last 10 years, if I can almost capture that as the consumer brand phase of my life.
Right.
Really got triggered by, in a way, Paperboat. So, a lot of credit to Neeraj and his perseverance and how he has built a great brand and a great business. So that is one, I would say, interesting example of something which, was born literally in front of my eyes. The second one is another very interesting company. Again, people I knew personally and done a phenomenal job, is a brand called Licious. Yeah, so this is, Vivek and Abhay, and Vivek used to be in Helion as our finance controller.
Okay.
So, I worked with him for 10 years and, so when suddenly, he came to me and he said, listen, there's this friend of mine called Abhay and, we are starting a business to deliver fresh meat to the, consumer homes. I actually felt it was quite I would say, interesting, but a slightly crazy idea. There's enough and more meat suppliers there. Is really a business, but I love their passion, and I love their belief in what they were trying to do. And there was some logic in the core proposition, because obviously there is a issue around hygiene, quality, those kind of things. And funny thing was that when they started the business, Vivek came and told me, we are starting this business and we are assuming that you're an investor and here is the amount we are putting against your name. So I didn't invest in the company. I was told to write a check. But more than that is just to see how these two, Abhay and Vivek have evolved first as, great entrepreneurs, then as great leaders. And now, I would say they're at the verge of building a very, very successful company. So there's a lot of pride in having seen that journey along with them.
That's amazing, right, Kanwal? Because if you just go back and look at something on paper being presented as an energy drink or hey, I'm going to deliver meat, right? Not a lot of us, in fact, most of us would not consider this as massive opportunities, but you've done that, you've backed it, and you've seen the success come out, right? So to me, right, the question then becomes like, how does one identify a promising idea? Is there a science to it, or it's largely you just know it?
The intuition and the judgment call that I could take as a one-man individual investor was very different. So to answer your question from that lens, it is really all about who's sitting in front of you. You're looking you in the eye and you say, okay, I want to back this person. And I must say, it's not that you get it right every time, not because you didn't back the right person, but there were other issues like market and, the product market fit and timing and all that. So I've had some really, what I believe, potentially very high quality entrepreneurs who have not really been that successful. But to me, as an individual investor, somebody who looks somebody in the eye, that was really my benchmark. However, in a professional fund setup, I must say that you try to marry both. You can't not follow your intuition. You can't not back, especially in an early stage situation. And that really is, I would say, learning you learn over and over and over the years, and you still get it wrong. But that's ultimately the most important, I would say, experiential kind of judgment that you are taking.
If I were to quantify this, right, for founders, what would you say, at least what would you look for the top, let's say, 3 traits in an entrepreneur when it's presented to you? Is there a top 3 traits that are must have?
So I think to me, there are 2 or 3 almost foundational things that instinctively one looks for. One is clearly vision. And vision is important because, you are looking for people who want to change the world. The whole concept of entrepreneurship stems from trying to do something which is not there, it's disruptive. So you're looking for, somebody who has an idea, who has an interesting concept, but who's thinking big, who's thinking something like he can really, create something really large and big. Second is passion. not only do you have vision, but it's not a corporate vision. It's an individual's vision. It's your passion. It's how you're really all in. So you meet a lot of senior executives who are still working in their regular day jobs and have some interesting idea, and you know looking for funding to quit their job and start a company. I think those are some of the areas that at least I have learned in my career are not necessarily the best opportunities, because
Right.
you're still not proven yourself to be an entrepreneur. You're still a corporate executive trying to be an entrepreneur. So those are some of the aspects there. The third is, of course, in the whole, execution side, you're looking for, scrappiness, bootstrap mindset, willingness to, find solutions in a more tactical, everyday manner. I mean, the jugaad mindset.
Yeah.
That's the other one. You want people who are willing to, get in there, roll up their sleeves and dirty their hands, and keep, innovating around even small things. And then the last piece, I would say, has to be all about charisma and about ability to work with a very, diverse set of people. Because
Right.
as a startup entrepreneur, and you are a successful one, so you know that hiring the right people, getting others to buy into your dream, whether it's investors, whether it's vendors, whether it's your channel partners or people you hire, you have to literally sell a dream before there is any business on the ground.
While of course the vision, passion, and the ability to hustle and execute is we've heard a lot about it. But the fourth trait, Kanwal, that you pointed out, right? The ability to, interact with all kinds of diverse people from different backgrounds. I think that's not talked about enough, and I'm really glad you brought that up. We've never articulated that. I've never seen anybody articulate that. So that's a very important trait.
See, you are ultimately, almost selling thin air to
Yeah.
your business. How
Right.
do you get people to believe in you?
Right. And that kind of makes me go to this point where, while we also look at business metrics, right? There are a lot of business plans and stuff like that. And this is where I think I want to get to that point which you mentioned, is that have you funded, like you've just said, I'm sold from the get-go, although on paper, none of the business metrics were favorable. Has there been a case like that? We'd love to know.
I see, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of these business metrics on paper mean nothing because we are investing in startups.
Hmm.
So I have done Paperboard, Licious, Mama Earth. I can point out so many companies where there is no business. So there is really no metric. I mean, you can extrapolate anything. I mean, you have
Right.
to take a judgment call. So in a sense, the role and the value of metrics is, I would say, only up to a point of just validating the assumptions and almost, validating the intuition and the judgment of the founder and how they're thinking about the metrics, not the
Right.
number itself.
Also would love to kind of understand, like, what has been the craziest idea that you've been ever pitched?
We have seen ideas like, frozen mithai and, business model based on camel's milk or goat's milk. Or so I'm saying, there are lots of entrepreneurs who have ideas which can be quite exotic.
Mm-hmm.
But they are genuinely believe that this is the business they want to be in, and that's why I wouldn't call anything crazy, because who are we to judge what is right or wrong?
Yeah.
Every business technically doesn't need to scale, and that's one of my most important learnings, and what I keep telling a lot of entrepreneurs, saying, listen,
Yeah.
you have to raise VC money, you don't have to build a business which is a very large business, because there is a lot of value in building very interesting, very boutique, profitable, interesting businesses.
In fact, it reminds me of my times when I started the Better India after having been more in the tech startup space, and pretty much every mainstream. I don't come from the media background, right? And every mainstream editor that I actually met would say that this is not. I mean, nobody reads this stuff. This is not even needed, and it came off as a very crazy idea. So I think it's all to do with the frame of reference from where you are evaluating something, right? Absolutely right on that. One more question: what is the fastest you've taken to say yes to investing in an idea?
So, I mean, let me tell you the story of Mamaearth.
Yeah,
This was
please.
so somebody introduced me to Varun, and he's based in Delhi. I was in Bangalore, and we said, let's set up a call, let's discuss the business, and I'll meet you when I come to Delhi. And he was already, raising money, and he had already got some individual investors signed up. This is on my personal side before the fund started. And I had a call with him. I think we spent maybe about an hour. And I said, he's talking so much of sense. I think this is a great idea and he will build a great business. So in my head, I had said yes to him on the phone. But, just to complete the loop, I did go to Delhi. I met Ghazal and Varun, their husband-wife team. And, it just further strengthened my confidence and my belief in what they were doing. Again, there was no product. They're just a concept. They had developed some interesting packaging and some ideas around what they were doing. I think that's probably the most, I would say, instant kind of thing.
So when we're talking about all these brands, right from Paperboat, Licious, Mamaearth, so the entire universe of this, what is being now called as the direct-to-consumer buzzword, right, which is kind of starting to take off. What does D2C really mean to you and to Fireside? And why do you think it's all the rage now? Why is there so much noise around it now?
So, I think the framework that we work with at Fireside, and I guess it answers partly the question you asked, is we believe that there is almost a brands 2.0 of how brands can be built. And that is a combination of, on one side, a very strong and I would say very aware and aspirational young population. So the millennials, the Gen Z and so on, who are, very, very aware of what's happening in the rest of the world, who have very different expectations, very different aspirations from the brands they consume. And it goes beyond just the product. It goes into, what is the story behind the brand? Who are the people who are, selling me this product? Are they socially conscious? Are they environmentally conscious? So there are lots of nuances to how today's generation is making their conscious brand choices. So that is one, I would say, fundamental driver of what our belief is. And the second is that the entire infrastructure or the emergence of the digital, universe has created some very interesting disruptions in how you engage with the consumer, how you build communities, how you build almost the one-to-one connects.
Right.
And therefore, all the work you do around the influencers, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the YouTubes. And on the other side, the choice of channels, the ability to reach consumers through marketplaces and your own, direct efforts and so on and so forth. So in a way, if you think of it as a macro, almost like a seminal trend, it's this convergence of a consumer who's looking for new choices and a new way to talk to that consumer and, reach that consumer through the digital world. Is opening up these opportunities for new age young brands. Right. And interestingly, the third missing piece in this whole link was that because in India building brands has been so difficult, so complex, because you really had to do door to door, shop to shop, like mom and pop store distribution, and then put a lot of money behind mass media and television and newspapers and so on. So suddenly you have, these young brands who are identifying with the millennials, who are able to reach them through efficient ways in a very direct and personal manner, and at a efficiency level of capital required, which is like, never heard before.
And Kanwal, if in this coming year, and I know this has been a washout of a year, but in the coming year, if you had to place your bets on any particular sector, what would that be?
So I would actually broad base that thought into a very interesting trend which we have been tracking for the last 3 years, and suddenly it's become, center of plate, if I can use the term, which is the whole space of wellness. So wellness is again not a sector, because wellness is concerned with what you put in your mouth. So everything to do with food and beverages. Wellness is to do with what you put on your body. So everything to do with personal care and beauty and all the other products. And wellness has enough and more things to do in your home context. Whether it's your hygiene, whether it's your the quote unquote the areas of fitness and how you are looking after your own body. So we believe that this COVID experience is almost driving all of us to be far more conscious and far more aware of how we live and every aspect of 360 of what we are doing both with ourselves and our surroundings. Second theme which is starting to emerge is what we are seeing, very interesting emergence of this whole experiences at home. Because we have never, I guess, in our adult lives, most of us have not spent 3 months locked in. We have discovered a lot more that we are doing with ourselves in a home environment, whether it's to do with what we do in the kitchen and family cooking sessions and eating together and learning how to do things. So the whole ready to cook, ready to eat, that space has picked up. And in a way, Cheers and ID and Tasty Tales, these all fall into that kind of categories.
Right.
Or it is about home fitness. So a lot of people are doing online classes, and we have a company called Sarva, which does now digital online yoga and a lot of content around that. We have seen some tremendous amount of pick up on that.
So wellness is that umbrella that you defined it very well, right? This is really the trend that we are starting to see in terms of where everyone is gravitating towards. Absolutely spot on. That's something that even we are seeing when we talk to our community in terms of how can we lead more sustainable lives. There is this whole movement towards health and hygiene happening. So absolutely over there. Now I want to kind of get into a few sort of much faster questions coming at you. And the first one is, what are you reading right now?
I am a very poor reader. So I actually don't read too much, So honestly, my life revolves around my ecosystem of entrepreneurs and engaging with them. So that's a question I don't have a good answer to.
And so, if you were to say, or what's the one book that you've really liked that you've read?
I actually have, and this is completely contrarian to anything you would ever imagine. I have read every book written on Starbucks.
Okay.
And my favorite book is the autobiography of Howard Schultz.
The other question I had is, and I think you probably have already touched upon this, but who are the entrepreneurs who you admire? I mean, entrepreneurs that you really admire.
So, I have worked with, like I said, several of them. Obviously, one person that I've seen literally build a business from scratch to a multi-billion-dollar business is Deep Kalra. So I would say he would be top of my list. And then, in my own, crop of entrepreneurs that I have been working with, so many of them, whether it's Neeraj, whether it's, PC Mustafa of ID Fresh. Again, really, this is to me the Starbucks example, pour your heart into it, one idli at a time.
It's incredible, Kanwal, now that, while I'm just having this conversation with you, it turns out that pretty much on a day-to-day basis, I'm touched and I'm using brands that have actually been backed by you, right? So you've got ID in our kitchens. I use Bombay Shaving Company's razors, so it's incredible how you've actually managed to back so many ideas which have become all pervasive in current Indian urban society.
Oh, you are our target audience, so I mean, we are for you as our core guy too. Yeah.
What would be the other investors that you admire? Who are the ones you think are really kind of backing these great ideas very well?
So again, I feel that I have worked with all the I would say very successful VCs in the Indian context, whether it's the Axel founder Shubhrato Prashant, people like GB, VT, even people from pretty much everywhere. Nexus. I would single out one person as a Tejul Somaya of Light Speed. Again, I have had a couple of boards with him. Very thoughtful, very entrepreneur friendly. So if you are looking for the right virtues of how you engage and how you build a equation with founder, and of course success, he's been super successful, but so have been a lot of others.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe just from the empathy you have towards a founder and the way you work with a founder, I found him to be quite exceptional.
And I also want to kind of understand what has been your biggest learning from investing in all these D2C brands.
So two things. One, I would say a more business learning, which is that you are always a kingmaker. You are never the king, and a lot of us forget that. And I can say it for our industry in general. There are a lot of VCs, and including me at points in time, become very directive, become very do it this way kind of mindset. And to me, that is the death knell. You take the entrepreneur out of the entrepreneur and you make him into a manager, and you have lost everything. So that is one big learning for me. And the second learning is that our business has a lot to do with right time, right place. So you have to almost every day get up in the morning and consider yourself lucky that you are doing what you're doing. So I do believe that there is something beyond just a very well defined metrics which makes success. So you can do everything right and still not get to the right thing. So
that's interesting that you say that, right? Because a lot of the entrepreneurs who are trying to build stuff are constantly thinking there's so much for me to kind of keep learning and stuff. But from an entrepreneur's perspective, you're thinking that, oh, venture capital has got it all figured out. They need me to kind of show up and do it. But then that's obviously not the case. When you're on the other side, it's so different.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's the beauty, because you are learning from every entrepreneur. In fact, for us, the biggest excitement is that in fact, we are never going to be specialists. We are always going to be generalists. So, what somebody is doing well in one setup in one company, and we see, so many such examples. So we will always keep distilling this, wider set of experiences and trying to see how we can help our companies in giving it back.
The last thing, what I would love to hear is one advice that you would give specifically to brand creators.
As an entrepreneur, you owe it to yourself to be honest about what you're doing. And second is, don't be in a rush. I think, I would say VCs have, as a community, have spoiled the entrepreneurs in wanting to chase faster growth at any cost. And, so there are bad habits that have got built in. So I would say that, be very thoughtful, be willing to invest time and energy in building the foundations of your business.
No, that's very interesting, because if the values of the brand are not strong enough, I think consumers are really smart. They see through that. And so you can maybe game the system for a few months, but it's very hard to sustain that in the long run. Thanks a lot, Kanwal, again, for joining the show. I think it's super insightful for anybody listening to this, anybody wanting to build a consumer brand. So thanks a lot for these insights.
My pleasure. Thanks, Dhimant.